It was upon a cold morning in late October, in the year 1840-something, that I received a letter sealed in dull green wax bearing a crest I did not know. It informed me, in the dry cadence of solicitors, that I was sole heir to one Mr. Cyril Bartram, a cousin so distant I had never met him, and that there had been bequeathed to me a property of some antiquity in the Welsh Marches, Holloway Court, together with all its furnishings, all its papers, and one painting which my cousin had insisted, in his final hour, must on no account be destroyed. The drive to Holloway Court was long, and the country into which it bore me grew steadily wilder. Stone walls gave way to hedgerows, hedgerows to thickets, thickets to bare and silent moor. I arrived in the violet hour, when day and night confer in low voices, and saw the house at last, a low grey range of weathered stone with steep slate roofs, narrow windows, and a single lamp already lit in the great hall, though no soul appeared at the door, nor came forth to take my horse. The interior was clean, kept, and quietly waiting, though I encountered no servant. A fire burned in the parlour, a meal stood ready upon the table, a folded note in old hand begged me to consider the house my own. After dining alone in that great silence, I took a candle and explored. In the east gallery I came upon a long line of portraits, strangers all, ladies and gentlemen of 2 centuries gone, and at the very end of the gallery, beneath a tall arched window, one painting larger than the rest, draped over with a sheet of black silk. Some impulse, call it unwisdom, call it fate, moved me to lift the silk. The cloth slid down with a whisper that struck me oddly cold, and there beneath was revealed a painting of a young woman, perhaps 22, attired in deep mourning of an antique cut. Her dark hair was drawn severely back, her hands lay folded upon a missal, her eyes, large, grey, tilted faintly toward the viewer, held an expression I cannot honestly describe, save that I felt foolishly that I had been recognized. The vicar of the nearby parish, who called the following morning out of courtesy, supplied me with her name and history. She was Eleanora Glynn, betrothed in the autumn of 1788 to my forebear, Sir Marmaduke Bartram, and dead of a fever 6 days before the wedding was to be solemnized. Sir Marmaduke, half mad with grief, had commissioned the portrait from her death mask, and afterwards had ordered it hung at the long end of the east gallery, with strict injunction that it never, by any hand, be moved. That night before retiring, I walked once more through the gallery, for the picture had begun to occupy my thoughts in a manner I did not entirely countenance. Her right hand, I felt sure, had not earlier been so high. It rested now upon the missal at her bosom rather than upon her lap, and the missal itself appeared closed where before it had been open. I stood long before the canvas, candle trembling, and at length convinced myself that I had been imposed upon by a trick of memory and a trick of light. In the library next morning I found, in a desk drawer marked with a black ribbon, the daily diary of the late Mr. Bartram. He had filled it, page after page, with a single subject, the painting. She moves, he had written. She moves at night by little, a degree, a finger's breadth, but she moves. Each morning I tally what I find. Each night, when the candles are out, she comes nearer. He had drawn small diagrams, dated. The latest entries were in a hand that shook beyond reason. I took the diary into the gallery and laid it open before the portrait. It was true. By every measure his trembling sketches set down, she was nearer than she had been a month before. Her gown filled more of the canvas, her face was larger, the line of her brow was now a hand's breadth above the level of the missal, and there was, I thought, the faintest curve of a smile upon her lips, where his sketch had recorded none. I closed the diary very gently and stepped backward from the painting. I slept poorly that night, and at some hour past 2 I woke to the unmistakable sound of bare feet upon the gallery boards above my chamber. They paced slowly, with a pause at intervals, as though their owner stopped to look at something, or indeed at someone. I lit no candle. I dared not. In the morning I climbed to the gallery and found, leading from the foot of her painting toward the door of my chamber, a faint trail of damp footprints, very small, that smelled exquisitely of roses. Each night thereafter she came nearer. Her eyes now followed me. This was no fancy, I tested it, walking from one end of the gallery to the other, and her gaze attended me as faithfully as a wife's. The painted candles by her hand burnt with a flame that flickered when, in my own room some chambers away, the air stirred. I locked the gallery door. The lock in the morning was open. I locked my own door instead. The footsteps came as far as the threshold, and there waited, patient. On the seventh evening I entered the gallery and observed a fresh and dreadful alteration. Behind her, where before had been only flat shadow, she had given herself an open window, and through the window, painted in fine, exquisite detail, I beheld the interior of my own bedchamber, the very room in which I now slept. The bed was unmade as I had left it. A book lay open upon the nightstand. A nightshirt, my own, hung upon the door. She had been there. She had measured it. By the ninth night her hand was at the frame. The white fingers, slender and very still, gripped the gilt edge of the canvas as though she were leaning forward to step out. I observed with a sickly fascination that the gilt where she touched was darker, the gold of the leaf rubbed thin by an attention which in oil paint ought not to have been possible. I retreated to my chamber and barred the door. From the gallery came, softly, a sigh of pleasure, as of a long task at length within reach. I do not know the hour at which it happened. I remember only that I stood, suddenly, in a place I did not know, a gallery seen from the wrong side, and that there was glass, or some thin lacquer, between me and a man in a nightshirt who lay upon the boards before me, his face turned upward in the candlelight, eyes wide and empty. I knew the face. It was my own. And in the doorway of my chamber, drawing the bolt with slow and tender care, stood Eleanora Glynn in my borrowed clothes, smiling. They will say the cousin died in his sleep, as Bartram before him. The will, when it is read, will name another distant relative. The house will be cleaned, the gallery dusted, the great black silk replaced. And one autumn evening, some years from now, a stranger will lift the silk and find a portrait larger than the rest, a young man in shirt sleeves, his eyes upon the viewer, his hand half raised in greeting or perhaps in warning, and behind him, faintly, the curve of a smile, the hint of a missile, the pale shape of a woman waiting.